Hey everyone, welcome back to The Explainer. If you're a focused learner looking to communicate with crystal clarity, well, you are in the exact right place today. We're going to build a highly visual, totally structured toolkit to fix some of the absolute most common sentence errors out there. By the end of this explainer, I promise, you're going to look at sentences in a completely new structural way.
So here's our roadmap for today. First, identifying run-on sentences. Second, 3 fixes for those run-ons. Third, what even are modifiers? And finally, misplaced and dangling modifiers. All right, let's jump right in.
Okay, part 1, identifying run-on sentences.
So our very first category of errors deals with sentences that honestly just don't know when to stop. The first type, it's called a fused sentence. Think of it kind of like two complete statements or complete thoughts that a writer has just jammed together into a single sentence. They run together with absolutely zero punctuation between them to signal a break. It's basically a grammar pileup.
Let's play grammar detective for a quick second. Take this phrase. The room is locked, no one has a key. It feels super rushed, right? To fix this, we actually need to find exactly where the first complete thought ends and the second one begins. The room is locked, that's one thought. No one has a key, that's the second. They're illegally fused together without any kind of break. Now, the second type of run-on is the infamous comma splice. This happens when you incorrectly splice two complete thoughts together using only a comma. Now look, a comma is a wonderful tool, it really is, but it's simply not strong enough on its own to glue two independent complete thoughts together. It just buckles under the pressure. And this example brilliantly illustrates the problem. Check this out. The wall is covered with ivy, a stone path leads to it. I mean, it looks a little better than a fused sentence, but it's absolutely still an error. That comma is basically doing a job it was never hired for. Identifying this weak joint is step 1 to actually fixing the structure of your sentence. Moving right along to part 2, 3 fixes for run-ons. Okay, so now that we know exactly how to spot the structural weaknesses, both those fused sentences and the comma splices, here are the 3 actionable steps you need to add to your grammar toolkit. Step 1, divide the run-on into 2 completely separate sentences. Step 2, add a comma and an appropriate joining word. Or step 3, use subordination, which basically just means making one of those complete thoughts dependent on the other. Try to lock these 3 steps into your brain. But before we actually apply those steps, let's look at the tools we're going to be using. For Rule 2, your joining words are conjunctions, things like and, but, and so. And for Rule 3, your dependent words, which are also known as subordinating words, include terms like because, when, if, since, and although. Having this handy visual list makes correcting these errors so much easier. So check out how simple Rule 1 is in action. Take our fused sentence. The lake is calm today, it looks like a blue mirror. Literally no punctuation. We simply divide it. Bam. We add a full stop after today and capitalize it. The lake is calm today. It looks like a blue mirror. See? Problem entirely solved. Now let's see how this builds with Rule 2. We've got a classic comma splice here. Saad is nervous about tests. His grades are the best. That comma is way too weak. But by keeping the comma and just adding the joining word but, we instantly create grammatical harmony. Saad is nervous about tests, but his grades are the best. The contrast makes total sense and the structure is solid as a rock. All right, now for Rule 3, subordination. We've got a slightly gross real-world example straight from our source material for this one. The fish was served with its head still on. I lost my appetite. Yeah, we can fix this by applying a dependent word to that first clause. Because the fish was served with its head still on, I lost my appetite. We basically just made that first thought dependent on the second, threw in a comma right after the dependent clause, and boom, beautifully fixed. Which brings us to part 3, what are modifiers? All right, we've officially conquered punctuation, so let's shift gears over to placement. What even is a modifier? Well, it's actually pretty simple. It's just one or more words that describe or modify another word or group of words in a sentence. They're the things that add detail, color, and real specificity to your writing. And finally, part 4, misplaced and dangling modifiers. Because here's the thing. Placing these descriptive words in the wrong spot can actually lead to some absolutely fantastic, completely unintentional comedy. Read this sentence directly from our source material and just let it sink in for a second. The sparrow built a nest at the back of our house of grass and twigs. Okay, wait a second. Really think about the logic here. Is the house actually made of grass and twigs? No way, right? But because of where the modifier is placed,
literally at the very end of the sentence, smack next to the word house, it accidentally describes the house instead of the nest.
The absolute most crucial point here is proximity. Modifiers must sit as close as humanly possible to the word they describe. Notice how just shifting the phrase clears the whole thing up. The sparrow built a nest of grass and twigs at the back of our house. By moving the modifier right next to the nest, the intended meaning is perfectly clear.
Okay, here's another incredibly funny example from our text. My brother bought a used car from a local dealer with a leaking pipe. Now, I feel terrible for this local car dealer, but he probably doesn't personally have a leaking pipe.
Right, so in the original sentence, the modifier accidentally attaches to the poor dealer. To fix it, we literally just shift the modifier right next to the car. My brother bought a used car with a leaking pipe from a local dealer. Order and logic are completely restored to the universe. It's like a giant puzzle clicking into place.
And that brings us to a slightly trickier error, the dangling modifier. A dangling modifier is a descriptive phrase that describes a subject that is entirely missing or just incorrectly placed in the main part of the sentence. It basically just leaves a descriptive phrase awkwardly hanging out there, completely helpless, with no clear target to latch onto. Take this opening clause, for example, staring dreamily into space. This is a dependent clause, helplessly dangling. It's waiting for a subject. Who exactly is staring dreamily into space? The very next noun in the sentence absolutely must be the person doing the staring.
Let's see what happens when we get it wrong. Staring dreamily into space, the instructor's loud voice startled me. Without a clear subject, grammatically speaking, it literally sounds like the instructor's voice was staring into space. To fix this awful dangle, we can just add a subject and verb right into that opening phrase. As I was staring dreamily into space, the instructor's loud voice startled me. See? Now we know exactly who is doing what.
So, as we wrap up today's explainer, I want to leave you with a final thought to really test out your brand new grammar toolkit. Next time you write an email, an essay, or literally even just a text message, ask yourself, what exactly will my modifiers be pointing at? Take a quick second to ensure your sentences aren't running on without breaks and that your descriptive words are snug right up against the proper targets. That way, you never accidentally write about a leaking car dealer. Thanks so much for joining me on this deep dive. Keep practicing, and I'll see you in the next explainer.